some more fun with solving equations. I had a little bit of challenge to it because today we are going to solve two-step equations. Lesson 3.5, page 110, 111. And we are going to use inverse operations and properties of equality. That's okay. We've been doing it before. We have been using it already. Inverse operations and properties of equality. Our essential question, how do you solve equations involving more than one step? So this is going to be very important because we're doing two-step today. Don't worry, we're going to get more challenging after this. We got to remind ourselves of our goals. It's so important because this is going to help us answer our essential question. And remember, our first goal is to isolate that variable, to get it all by itself on one side of the equation. We use inverse operations to undo the given operation. Our second goal is to keep the equation balanced. That's right, it's got to be balanced using properties of equality. In other words, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And now here's two things you need to write down. The first one says each operation requires that both goals be completed. You've got to do it. So if it's two-step means two operations. So I'm going to write that down. Two-step means two operations. And if we're doing two-step and each step requires the goals to be completed, that means for the first step we're going to isolate and keep balanced, and for the second step we're going to isolate and keep balanced. Now, which one do we do first though? Well, this is what we're going to learn right here. It says solving the equation, you're going to use inverse operations, but you're going to use them in reverse order of operations. So you solve using inverse operations in reverse order of operations. And so let's just get busy doing it. Solving equations. The first one, 2h plus 9 is equal to 21. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's where I'm saying it's so important when we were doing writing down what was happening before. So if I follow the order of operations, if that 21 were not there, we would multiply by 2 first. So that variable is multiplied by 2 first because multiplication comes before adding the 9. So we are multiplying by 2 and then we're adding 9. That is actually what is happening right now in the equation. So we want to use inverse operations and we want to use them in the reverse order. So the first reverse order would be an inverse operation would be to subtract 9 and then divide by 2. That's how we solve right here. So I come over to my equation, I am going to subtract 9 first. That's what it said to do first after I wrote down, and that's what we're going to do. So the 2h would just come down, 2h. This simplifies to 0, so we don't need to add 0, equals 21 minus 9 is 12. Now it says we're going to divide by 2. So I'm going to come over here and divide by 2, and I'm going to go over there and divide by 2. Notice I have isolated by dividing by 2, and I have keep balance by doing it on both sides. The same thing with the subtracting of the 9. So the 2 simplify out. H is now equal to 6. Got it? Let's try another one. Please remember, if you need to, watch the example, then pause, and then write it down as you're re-saying it in your head. It really does help. All right, so solving negative 1/4 w minus 15 is equal to 28. So following the order of operations right now, what is happening with w? Well, first, we're multiplying by a negative 1/4. Second, we are subtracting 15. The inverse operations of that in reverse order of operations would be to add 15 and then divide by a negative 1/4. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we know that dividing, ding, 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 bells go off. That means we are going to multiply by the reciprocal, which 4 over 1 is 4. All right? So now let's do that. We're going to add 15 first because that's what we said we were going to do. So we're going to add 15. We're going to add it to both sides to isolate and keep balanced. So negative 1/4 w is now equal to 43. And then we are going to multiply by 4. A negative 4, my bad. We're going to multiply by a negative 4. I almost forgot that because I didn't write it over there. We're going to multiply by a negative 4. And so that 1/4 and the negative 4 will simplify out. W is now equal to 100. That's negative 172. Again, you can do that quickly in your head because 4 times 3 is 12. And 4 times 4 is 16. Add the 0, 160 and 12 is 172. Moving along. Solving y divided by 8 plus 5 is equal to negative 3. So we are first dividing by 8, and then we were adding 5. The inverse of that would be to subtract 5 and multiply by 8. So I'm going to subtract 5 first from both sides. That's what it says to do first. And so y divided by 8 is now equal to negative 8. And then we're going to multiply by 8 because that's what it said to do. Simplifying out, y is now equal to negative 64. Moving right along. Our fourth example, g divided by negative 3 minus 4 is equal to 13. So we're first dividing by a negative 3, and then we're subtracting 4. So the inverse of that, which I didn't write that correctly how I usually do. So I am going to erase that because I don't like it when I don't do it the way I usually do. So, doing that again. I am dividing by negative 3, and then I'm subtracting 4. The inverse of that would be to add 4 and to multiply by negative 3. So the first thing we're going to do, add 4 to both sides. That isolates and keeps the equation balanced. G divided by negative 3 is now equal to, 17. And then I'm going to multiply by a negative 3 on both sides. That will help me isolate and keep balanced. The 3 on this side simplifies out, leaving me with G. And 17 times a negative 3 is negative 51. Bingo! Ladies and gentlemen, our first quick ride of the night, solving these two equations. Go ahead and pause it, write them down, get a snack, get a break, come back and see me for our second of 3. By the way, we do have 3 videos tonight, so we'll see you again in just a moment.